Hello, peaceful soul. I'm your storyteller this evening, here to help you unwind and drift into a gentle, restful sleep. Before we begin our journey, remember to like the video and subscribe for more calming bedtime tales. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. And if there's a story you'd love to hear next, I'd be happy to bring it to life. My name is Sophia Bennett. I'm a freelance graphic designer. For about 6 months, I was expecting my first child. My days were usually quiet and peaceful, spent at my computer creating designs, and then, in the evenings, nesting. I loved my home, a small, cozy place. I was looking forward to motherhood. But my pregnancy wasn't just bringing new life. What came with it, what arrived in my dreams, was a horror I wish I could forget. I was about halfway through my pregnancy. My belly was growing, and I was excited. My husband, David, and I had started picking out baby names. Life felt full of promise. I'd spend my mornings designing logos and websites, then my afternoons arranging tiny clothes or reading baby books. Everything felt calm and normal, even with the usual pregnancy aches and tiredness. Then the dreams started. Not regular, vivid pregnancy dreams about forgotten baby items or funny family gatherings. These were different. They were disturbingly real. I found myself in dark, ancient forest, trees towering, their branches twisted like skeletal arms. There were strange symbols carved into the bark, glowing faintly, and always a chilling sense of presence. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, my heart hammering against my ribs. I'd gasp for air, the images still fresh in my mind. I told myself it was just pregnancy hormones messing with my head. I was stressed. That had to be it. But the dreams felt too real to just be a bad night's sleep. The dreams kept coming, almost every night. They became more intense, more detailed. The symbols I saw in the trees started appearing in my mind during the day. Sometimes I'd see a fleeting glimpse of a strange bird I'd only ever seen in the dream, perched outside my window. Or a specific symbol would seem to appear in the shifting shadows on the wall for a split second. I felt a growing dread. It was like I was being watched, even when I was wide awake and alone. My focus on my work suffered. I found myself staring blankly at my computer screen, lost in thought. David noticed I was quieter, more withdrawn. He asked if I was okay. I just blamed it on being tired, not wanting to worry him. But then I started hearing things in my dreams. A faint, distant chant. It wasn't in any language I knew. It was low, guttural, and ancient. It had a rhythm that burrowed into my mind. And sometimes, after I woke up, the chant would echo in my thoughts. It felt like it was coming from inside my head, even when I was doing something normal, like making breakfast or sorting laundry. It was faint, barely there, but persistent. My instincts were screaming that something was wrong. This wasn't normal tiredness. This wasn't just hormones. This was something trying to break through. One night, the dream was overwhelming. I was back in that ancient forest. The trees pressed in on me, darker than ever. The air was thick with a strange, earthy smell. The chant was loud now, clear and terrifying. I saw shadowy figures moving around a huge bonfire in the center of a clearing. They were cloaked, their faces hidden, and as they moved, I realized they were chanting my name, my actual name, Adriana, Adriana. It was distorted, stretched out, but it was my name. My blood ran cold. The chant wasn't for some unknown person in a dream, it was for me. I woke up screaming. David jolted awake beside me, pulling me into a hug. "Adriana, what is it? What happened?" he cried, his voice thick with sleep and worry. I was panting, trembling, tears streaming down my face. The chant. They were chanting my name, I choked out. But the chant didn't stop. It was still there in my head, echoing in the silent bedroom. And then I felt it, a strange, vibrating sensation in my belly. It wasn't the baby kicking. It felt deeper, like a low hum, a resonance. It felt like the baby was reacting to the chant, or even worse, producing it. Then, in the dim light filtering from the hallway into our bedroom, I saw it. The same strange symbols from my dreams, the glowing ones briefly projected onto the nursery wall. Just for a second, then gone. But I saw them clearly. My vision blurred. I felt a sudden, powerful pull, a connection, as if something from that dream world was trying to cross over into our reality. And it wasn't trying to come through me, the host. It felt like it was trying to come through the baby, using our connection. I gave birth to a healthy baby boy, Liam. He was perfect, tiny fingers, soft hair, but I never truly felt free from those dreams or that chilling chant. The intense dreams stopped, but I still have flashes of the symbols sometimes, at the edge of my vision. And sometimes, when Liam is sleeping peacefully in his crib, I feel that same vibrating sensation in my belly, a ghost of a feeling, even though he's outside of me now. It's a phantom echo of that dark connection. I wonder what truly connected me to that dream world. What did I see? What was trying to come through? And I wonder if it's still connected to my son. I watched Liam closely, a knot of fear always in my stomach. Was he just a vessel? Was I? The horror followed me home and into my son's life, leaving me with a chilling uncertainty about what I truly brought into the world and what came with him. It's a silence I can't escape. My name is Eliza Thornton. I was 6 months pregnant with my first child. My husband, Derek, and I were so excited. We lived in a cozy apartment on the 3rd floor of a nice, quiet building. I was working from home, mostly just counting down the days until my baby arrived. I spent hours decorating the nursery, painting tiny stars on the wall, folding the softest blankets. It was a time of pure joy, mixed with the usual tiredness and heartburn. But then, things started happening that made me question everything I thought I knew about safety and about the little life growing inside me. It started with a smell. One sunny afternoon, I was in the baby's room, hanging a mobile over the crib. The window was open, a light breeze rustling the curtains. I took a deep breath, and that's when I smelled it. It was faint at first, like old, damp earth, mixed with something sickly sweet, like rotten flowers. It wasn't coming from outside. I checked the baby's closet, then under the crib. Nothing. I shrugged it off. Maybe it was the building, old pipes, or something from the neighbors. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just my pregnancy nose playing tricks on me. My senses were extra sharp back then, but the smell stayed, a faint, unsettling cloud in the corner of that bright yellow room. As the days passed, the smell grew stronger, especially at night. It became almost suffocating in the baby's room. I started having vivid, disturbing dreams. I would dream I was trapped in a dark space, pressing against a soft, squishy wall. And in these dreams, I would hear a strange, scratching sound, trying to get to something precious. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, my heart hammering against my ribs, convinced something was wrong. Then, small things began to move. I had placed a tiny baby rattle on a shelf, high up. One morning, I found it on the floor, under the window, A picture frame with an ultrasound photo of our baby was turned around, facing the wall. I'd tell Derek, and he'd say I must have knocked them over without thinking, or maybe the cat. But we didn't have a cat. My instincts were screaming that something was wrong. I felt watched, even when I was alone. A cold spot formed in the baby's room, right by the crib, even when the heat was on. Derek would touch it and say it was just drafts. But it was a different kind of cold. A knowing cold. One night, the smell was so thick it felt like I was breathing it. I was trying to sleep, but my mind raced. Derek was out late at work. The apartment was silent, except for the pounding of my own heart. Suddenly, I heard it. A faint crying sound. It wasn't a baby's cry, not really. It was more like a desperate, tiny wail, full of sorrow and fear, and it was coming from inside me. I froze. I touched my swollen belly, my hand trembling. My baby kicked, a strong, reassuring flutter. But then, something else moved, right under my hand. It wasn't a kick, it was a squirming, almost like a separate, small thing crawling under my skin. I sat up quickly, terrified. The crying sound got louder, more frantic, like it was trying to get out. Then I heard a soft scratching sound coming from inside my belly, matching the crying. It was faint but clear, like tiny claws on a surface. I felt immense pressure, not a Braxton Hicks contraction, but like something was pushing out from within. A cold, heavy pressure. I gasped, unable to make a sound. I tried to call Derek, fumbling for my phone, but my hand shook too much. The feeling of movement under my skin grew, like tiny claws struggling. I pressed my hands against my stomach, trying to push back whatever it was. Suddenly, a sharp, stabbing pain tore through me, like something was tearing. It lasted only a second, but it felt like forever. Just as quickly as it started, it stopped. The crying sound was gone. The smell in the room faded to nothing. The horrifying feeling of something moving inside me disappeared. I lay there, gasping for air, trembling uncontrollably, soaked in sweat. I stayed awake the rest of the night, holding my breath, staring into the darkness, convinced something had been there. Something had tried to get through. I never told Derek about the crying or the feeling of something moving inside me that wasn't our baby. He would have worried, maybe thought I was imagining things. I went to the doctor the next day, frantic. They ran tests. Everything was fine. Our baby was healthy. When my daughter was born a few weeks later, she was perfect. But sometimes, even now, years later, I still feel a phantom itch or a tiny strange movement deep inside my belly, even when I'm perfectly still. It makes my skin crawl. That experience changed how I view my body and the vulnerability of motherhood. I often wonder if that crying was a warning, or if something left a trace, a tiny, dark mark on me or on my baby before she even entered the world. My name is Victoria Lane. I'm a preschool teacher. I was 5 months pregnant with my second child. My life was a happy, busy mess, full of the joyful chaos of my 3-year-old son, Leo. My husband, Ben, was amazing. Our home was always noisy, filled with laughter and toys. I loved it. But this pregnancy brought a silence, a cold, watchful silence that was far more terrifying than any noise. I was deep into my second pregnancy. My belly was showing, and I felt the flutterings of the new life inside me. Our home, usually buzzing with Leo's energy, felt comforting. I spent my days teaching little ones, then coming home to my own little boy. My husband, Ben, was a huge help, taking over bedtime stories when I was tired. It was a good life, full of love and the usual happy noise. Then I started to notice something strange with my reflection. It was subtle at first. I'd catch a glimpse of myself in a window or a mirror, and for a split second, it looked distorted. Not quite me, like someone else was looking back from my eyes, or the reflection would move a tiny bit after I did, a brief, unsettling delay, like an echo. I'd blink, and it would be gone. I told myself I was just tired. Pregnancy brain, tricky Leiden, but it left me with a small, uneasy feeling, a prickle on the back of my neck. The reflection issue grew worse. It wasn't just distortion now. I started to catch glimpses of something else, a dark figure standing behind me in mirrors or in shop windows as I walked by. When I'd spin around, heart pounding, no one would be there. Just an empty space. It was always just out of direct sight, a fleeting shadow. I started avoiding mirrors, especially when I was alone. Then Leo, my 3-year-old, started talking about her. The quiet lady. He'd point to empty corners of rooms or just smile at the wall. The quiet lady is waiting for the new baby, he'd tell me, his voice innocent. My blood ran cold. I asked him what she looked like. He'd just shrug or say, "She's quiet." Objects in the house started moving. Small things, not big enough to alarm Ben, but enough to alarm me. A spoon I'd left on the counter would be on the floor. A picture frame on the shelf would be slightly crooked. I found my ultrasound photo, which I'd proudly taped to the fridge, moved to my bedside table. It was face down. My instincts were screaming that something was wrong. This wasn't a draft or a playful toddler. This was something deliberate, something watching, waiting. One afternoon, I was in the nursery. We had just finished decorating it. It was common with soft blues and greens. I was arranging some tiny blankets. Above the changing table, we'd hung a cute animal-shaped mirror. As I turned, I saw it. Not a distortion, not a shadow, a full, clear reflection of the quiet lady in the baby's mirror. She was tall and gaunt, with long, stringy, dark hair hanging around a pale face. Her eyes were deep-set, dark hollows, and they were fixed, directly on my swollen belly. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move. She smiled. It was a slow, wide, chilling smile that showed too many teeth. It wasn't human. It was full of hunger. A sudden, unnatural coldness filled the room, making my teeth chatter. The reflection lifted a bony, long-fingered hand. It slowly traced a symbol on the mirror's surface, a faint, glowing mark that appeared and then faded. I recognized it. I had seen it in an old book of local folklore my grandmother owned. It was a symbol for a child-hungry spirit. My heart slammed against my ribs. The reflection then pointed that same bony finger directly at my belly. At that exact moment, I felt a sharp internal kick, but it felt wrong. It wasn't my baby's familiar flutter or gentle jab. This was hard, powerful, almost violent. It felt like something else was pushing from the inside, trying to get out, or maybe trying to get in. I screamed. It was a primal, terrified sound. The reflection vanished instantly. The room returned to its normal temperature. But the terror remained, a cold knot in my stomach. I gave birth to a healthy baby girl, Madeline. She was perfect in every way. The strange reflection stopped after Madeline's birth. The moving objects ceased. For a while, I dared to hope it was all behind me, but I still feel an unnatural coldness in my home sometimes, especially in the nursery, even on the warmest days. Leo, my son, sometimes still mentions the quiet lady, saying she watches over Madeline. He says it so casually, as if it's perfectly normal. I constantly check mirrors, always glancing over my shoulder, terrified I'll catch a glimpse of that gaunt face again. I wonder if the spirit ever truly left, or if it simply moved its focus from my belly to my child. Is it still here, watching, waiting? The horror of being watched, of something desiring my unborn child, stays with me. It's a silent shadow in my home, a constant reminder that some things don't just want your baby, they want a part of your family forever. My name is Adrian Blackwood. I'm a software engineer, used to logic and data. For 9 months, I watched my wife, Rachel, go through her first pregnancy. It was supposed to be a time of excitement, planning, and getting ready for our new arrival. But instead, it became a journey into something deeply unsettling. My wife started to change, and it wasn't just the hormones. It was like she was becoming someone else, right before my eyes. Rachel was about 6 months pregnant. We were thrilled. Our apartment was small but cozy, filled with books and video games. We spent our evenings planning the nursery, looking at baby gadgets online, and generally enjoying our quiet life together. Rachel had her good days and bad days, as all pregnant women do, but she was generally her warm, sarcastic self. I loved her deeply. Then, the small changes began. Her voice. It wasn't always hers. Sometimes, when she was talking to herself or mumbling in her sleep, it would drop. It would become lower, rougher, almost gravelly. It would last for only a second. Then her normal voice would return. I'd ask her about it, and she'd just say, "What are you talking about, Kev? You're imagining things." I told myself she was right. Sleep talking, strange sounds, nothing to worry about. But the sound gave me a chill each time. The voice changes became more frequent. Sometimes, when we were talking normally, a word or a phrase would come out in that deep, raspy tone. It would interrupt her own sentence. Then she'd finish in her normal voice, completely unaware. It was like 2 different voices were trying to speak at once. Her eyes also started to change. They'd become unfocused, distant, almost empty for brief moments. It was unnerving. She'd snap out of it quickly, but the look in her eyes during those moments was cold, not like my Rachel at all. Then came the cravings. Not normal pregnancy cravings for pickles and ice cream. These were different. She started wanting raw meat. Not just rare, but almost raw. I'd cook steaks and she'd ask for them barely seared. She started to prefer gamey meats, things we never ate before, like venison or boar. She ate them with an intensity that bordered on feral. I'd try to offer her something else, but she'd get angry, a flash of pure rage in those changed eyes. It wasn't like her. Her gentle nature was fading. My instincts were screaming that something was wrong. This wasn't just pregnancy. This was something else entirely. One evening, I came home from work. The apartment was silent. Too silent. I called out for Rachel. No answer. I found her in the living room, sitting on the floor in the dark. The only light came from the street lamp outside. She was humming a strange, tuneless song I'd never heard before. Her back was to me. I noticed she was gently stroking her belly. Her movements were slow, almost hypnotic. "Rachel?" I asked, my voice soft, trying not to startle her. She didn't respond. I saw a glint on the floor beside her. It was a carving knife from our kitchen, a long, sharp one. My heart jumped into my throat. "Rachel, what are you doing?" I asked, a tremor in my voice. She slowly turned her head. Her eyes were completely black, like deep, empty wells. and her mouth was curved into a wide, unsettling smile that showed too many teeth. It wasn't Rachel's smile. It was something predatory. "He's almost ready," a voice rasped. It wasn't her voice. It was that gravelly, deep sound, but now it was full and strong, not a fleeting whisper. "He's hungry, Adrian, and so am I." My breath caught. The knife glinted in her hand again. She lifted it slowly, deliberately, and held it over her swollen belly. Not in a threatening way, but in a strange, ceremonial manner. It was like she was preparing a sacrifice. For a second, I thought she was going to hurt herself. Or the baby. Pure, raw terror shot through me. "No!" I shouted, rushing forward, tackling her gently, trying not to hurt her or the baby. The knife clattered to the floor. Rachel looked at me then, her eyes slowly returning to normal, wide and confused. "Adrian, what's going on? Why are you on the floor? What's that knife doing here?" she asked, her voice normal, perfectly innocent. She had no memory of any of it. My heart was pounding, my hands shaking. Rachel gave birth to a healthy baby boy, Ethan. He was perfect. And after he was born, the strange voice, the black eyes, the cravings, they all stopped. Rachel was herself again, totally and completely. But I can't forget what I saw. I can't forget that look in her eyes, that monstrous smile, that predatory voice. Sometimes, when Ethan cries in the middle of the night, a part of me wonders if that thing, whatever it was, is still lurking inside him, or if it just left a piece of itself behind. I watch him, even now, a little too closely. I analyze his expressions, listen to his cries, looking for any hint of that darkness. The horror followed me home, not just into our apartment, but into my family, making me question if my wife, the mother of my child, was truly herself for those 9 months, and if not, what else could happen? My name is Zoe Lancaster. I'm a veterinarian technician, used to dealing with animals, both wild and tame. For 9 months, I carried my first child. It was a period filled with the usual ups and downs, but it also brought a strange connection, a shared language with the natural world that turned from comforting to terrifying. What happened during my pregnancy wasn't just physical. It was a spiritual awakening that went terribly wrong. I was about 8 months pregnant. My life was spent helping animals, then coming home to my small house on the edge of a large forest. My husband, Tom, was an avid hiker, and we both loved the quiet peace of nature. I felt very connected to the earth, especially with a new life growing inside me. The sounds of the forest were a comforting presence. The hoot of an owl, the rustle of leaves, the chirping of crickets. It was my sanctuary. Then the animals started acting strangely around me. It began subtly. Our dog, a golden retriever named Daisy, would follow me everywhere, even more than usual. She'd lie under my feet, whimpering softly, her eyes wide and worried. She would bark at nothing, staring into the woods with her hackles raised. I just thought she was being protective of her pregnant owner. Cute, but a little annoying. But it wasn't just Daisy. The local wildlife changed too. The birds stopped singing near our house. The usually chatty squirrels would become silent when I stepped outside. Sometimes I'd see deer at the edge of the woods, staring at me with an unusual intensity, almost fearfully, before bolting away. This was odd. I'd always had a good rapport with animals. I told myself I was just being overly sensitive, attributing human emotions to animal behavior. But deep down, my instincts were screaming that something was wrong. This was more than just animal instinct. This was a response to something. One afternoon, I was sitting on our porch swing, enjoying the fresh air. Suddenly, the forest went completely silent. No crickets, no birds, no rustling leaves. An unnatural stillness descended. Then Daisy started whimpering, pressing herself against my legs, trembling. I looked up. All around the edge of our yard, on the tree line, were animals. Dozens of them. Deer, raccoons, opossums, squirrels, foxes. They were all standing absolutely still, perfectly silent, staring at me. Their eyes weren't just fearful now, they held a deep, ancient terror. Then they started to move. Slowly, deliberately, they began to encircle our yard. Not coming closer, but forming a tight, silent ring. Their eyes, all of them, were fixed on my belly. And then I heard it. A low, guttural growl, not from any one animal, but from all of them at once. It was a chorus of animal fear and warning. It was coming from their throats, but the sound felt like it was in my head. A message. It's coming. It's coming for the new one. My breath caught in my throat. My heart pounded. I tried to stand up, but my legs felt weak. The animals continued to growl, their collective gaze fixed on my womb. And then I felt a sharp, internal pain, a cold, piercing sensation, like something was trying to claw its way out from the inside. It wasn't a baby kick, it was something else entirely. It made me cry out. The animals reacted. Their growls intensified into a panicked chorus of barks, hisses, and snarls. They didn't attack me. They were reacting to something in me, or with me. They scattered, crashing back into the woods in a panicked frenzy, leaving behind a profound, terrifying silence. Daisy was still whimpering, now tucked under my chair, hiding her head. I was left alone, trembling, the pain still a dull throb in my side. My daughter, Evelyn, was born healthy and beautiful, and after she was born, the animals returned to normal. Daisy stopped whimpering. The birds sang again. The deer returned to our yard. But the connection, that raw, animalistic fear, never truly left me. Sometimes, when I walk through the forest with Evelyn, I feel a strange sense of being watched. The animals are calm now, but their eyes still hold a hint of that ancient terror when they look at Evelyn. I wonder what they saw, what they sensed in me, or in my child. Was I unknowingly carrying something besides my baby? Was it a warning about a spiritual connection gone wrong? The horror followed me home, a lingering unease that the world, even the natural world, knows secrets about my child that I never will. And that fear, that ancient animal fear, is still very much alive in me. My name is Damien Lockhart. I'm a high school history teacher. I considered myself a grounded, rational man. But my wife, Maria's, pregnancy with our twins challenged everything I believed about logic and reality. What started as peculiar occurrences around our old house became something far more sinister, making me question what was truly growing within our family. Maria was about 5 months pregnant with our twin boys. We were overjoyed and a little overwhelmed. Our home was an old, beautiful Victorian house full of character. We loved its quirks. My days were spent teaching history, then coming home to plan for our expanding family. We loved the old house. It had a comforting, lived-in feel. Then the house started making new sounds, not the usual creaks and groans of an old building. These were different. They were soft, rhythmic sounds, like something gently tapping or scratching. They often came from the nursery, which was still mostly empty. I'd go investigate, but find nothing. I'd tell Maria it was just the pipes or the wind. She'd nod, a little weary but trusting. but I knew it wasn't just the wind. The tapping seemed deliberate, almost like a code. The sounds grew more focused. They weren't random anymore. The tapping would happen directly on the nursery wall, in a specific pattern, almost like knocking. 3 quick taps, a pause, then one more. It was always the same. Sometimes I'd swear I heard faint, childlike laughter mixed in with the tapping, very distant, very soft. Maria started noticing it too, but she put it down to her hormones and overactive imagination. She'd get annoyed if I brought it up, saying I was just making her more stressed, but deep down, my instincts were screaming that something was wrong. This wasn't an old house settling. This was something calling. One night, I woke up to a dull thud. I checked on Maria. She was sound asleep. I got out of bed, heading for the nursery. The tapping was clear now, louder than ever. 3 quick taps, a pause, then one more. It sounded like it was coming from inside the wall. As I approached the nursery door, I heard Maria gasp from our bedroom. I turned back, worried. She was sitting up, clutching her belly. "The babies," she whispered, her voice filled with a strange mixture of fear and wonder. "They're tapping." I froze. I hurried back to her. "What do you mean?" I asked, my blood running cold. "They're tapping from inside," she said, her eyes wide. "The same rhythm you hear in the nursery. 3 quick, then one." And then I felt it too. I placed my hand on her belly, and clear as day, I felt 3 distinct bumps, then a pause, then one more. It was the same rhythm. From inside her, my heart pounded. We stared at each other, speechless, terrified. It was like our unborn twins were communicating with whatever was in the nursery wall. Or, worse, communicating as whatever was in the nursery wall. The tapping in the nursery stopped. A cold silence descended. But the tapping from inside Maria's belly continued, steady and relentless. It was a communication, a call and response between our unborn children and an unseen presence in our home. The tapping from inside Maria continued, almost constantly, throughout the rest of her pregnancy. It wasn't cute. It was deeply disturbing. It felt less like baby kicks and more like a steady, insistent rhythm, like a message being conveyed. I tried to talk to the doctors, but they just said it was fetal movement, sometimes strong and rhythmic. They looked at me like I was a crazy first-time dad. Our twin boys, Noah and Elijah, were born healthy, perfect in every way. And the tapping stopped, both in the house and inside Maria. For a while, I dared to hope it was all over. But sometimes, when the boys are playing in the nursery, I hear it again. A faint, almost imperceptible tapping from the wall. 3 quick taps, a pause, then one more. I watch my boys. Noah, who is often quiet and observant, sometimes smiles at the wall, a knowing look in his eyes. He'll make a soft tapping sound with his little fist on his leg, exactly the same rhythm. Elijah, more boisterous, will laugh and try to copy him. The horror followed me home and into my family, making me wonder if our twins were ever truly just ours. Were they communicating with something from the other side? Did they bring something with them? I still listen for the tapping, always. And every time Noah makes that sound, a chill runs down my spine. The connection didn't just disappear, it just became more subtle. And it is a constant reminder that some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed. My name is Penelope Ward. I'm a librarian. I've always loved quiet places, the smell of old books, and the comfort of knowledge. My pregnancy was a time I hoped would be peaceful, a chance to prepare for my child. Instead, It became a descent into a world of unsettling sounds and strange visions, making me question my own sanity. What happened wasn't just in my head, it felt like something was trying to rewrite my reality. I was about 4 months pregnant. I lived in a small apartment above a bookstore, a place filled with the scent of paper and ink. My husband, Sam, was an aspiring writer, and we both valued our quiet routines. My days were spent organizing books, helping patrons, and then coming home to a calm evening with Sam. Everything felt orderly, predictable, and safe. Then the sounds started. Not loud, obvious sounds. These were subtle. It began with faint, distant music, like a lullaby played on a very old, slightly broken music box. It was so faint I often questioned if I'd truly heard it. I'd pause, listen, and it would be gone. I told Sam about it, but he just heard the usual city noises. He thought I was probably just overtired, and I tried to believe him. But the music grew clearer. It wasn't always a lullaby anymore. Sometimes it was a discordant jumble of notes, like a broken record player spinning wildly. It often happened when I was alone, especially late at night. I started to see things too. Brief flashes of color, strange shapes at the edge of my vision, like a flicker of something not quite real. A shadow moving too fast in my peripheral vision, gone when I turned. I started rubbing my eyes, thinking I needed new glasses, or that pregnancy was making my vision blurry, but the images felt too distinct to be just blurry vision. Then the static began, a low, persistent hum, like a radio not quite tuned in. It wasn't audible to anyone else, but it was incredibly loud in my head. It made it hard to concentrate, to read, to even hold a conversation. It was a constant buzz that blocked out other thoughts. Sam worried about me. He saw how tired and jumpy I was becoming. He suggested I take a break from work. But how could I explain that my own mind was betraying me? My instincts were screaming that something was wrong. This wasn't exhaustion. This was an intrusion. One afternoon, I was at home, trying to read a book, but the static was deafening. The discordant music was playing loudly in my head now, a cacophony of unsettling sounds. I pressed my hands to my ears, but it didn't help. I closed my eyes, trying to find a moment of peace, and that's when I saw it. Not with my eyes, but in my mind. A vivid, horrifying vision. I was floating in a dark, swirling void. Around me, strange, glowing symbols pulsed and shifted, and in the center was a monstrous, multi-limbed creature made of shadow and light, reaching towards me. Its eyes, hundreds of them all gleaming, were fixed on my belly. And then, a voice. Not the static, not the music, but a clear, ancient voice that spoke directly into my mind. It wasn't in any language I knew, but I understood it completely, on a deeper level. It spoke of a gift, a connection, and a coming through. My eyes snapped open. I gasped, choking on air. The vision was gone, but the static and the music were louder than ever, like a celebration. I felt a cold, alien presence in my womb, a pressure that was not the baby. It was like something had just settled in, making itself at home. It felt like a breach, like a door had opened. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move. I felt utterly helpless. I carried my baby, Vincent, to term. He was born healthy, a beautiful, quiet boy. After his birth, the constant static and the disturbing music slowly faded. The strange visions stopped. For a while, I thought I was free, but sometimes when I'm reading a book, I hear a faint, distant lullaby, and for a split second, I see a glowing symbol at the edge of my vision. I watch Vincent closely. He's a quiet child. but sometimes he'll stare intently at empty spaces, a strange, knowing look on his face. Sometimes, when he's upset, he'll make a low, humming sound, almost like that static I heard. I wonder if that gift or connection wasn't for me, but for him. Was I just the bridge? Did that entity truly come through? The horror followed me home, a lingering question about what else I brought into the world along with my son. The music still plays sometimes, a chilling reminder that some frequencies are not meant for human ears. My name is Patrick Doyle. I'm a construction worker. I'm used to physical labor, to tangible things, to building. But my wife Nora's second pregnancy showed me that some things aren't built, they're grown, and sometimes they grow into something beyond understanding. We experienced things that made us question the very foundations of our reality, centered around our unborn child. Nora was about 7 months pregnant with our second child. Our home was a simple, sturdy house that I had helped build. Our first child, our daughter Lily, filled our lives with joy. My days were spent on construction sites, then coming home to the familiar comfort of family. Everything felt solid, real, and normal. Then, things in our house started to glitch. It began subtly. Lights would flicker for a second, then normalize. Our TV would briefly show static, then return to the program. Our cell phones would sometimes cut out mid-conversation, then regain signal. I blamed the old wiring in the house, or bad reception. It was annoying, but nothing truly alarming. But the glitches grew more severe. The lights would flicker violently, almost strobing. The TV would turn itself on and off. Our smart home devices would activate on their own, playing music or turning up the thermostat. It was like the house had a mind of its own. We tried resetting everything, but it would always start up again. And it seemed to happen most often when Nora was in the room, especially near her. Then the glitches started to affect sounds. Voices on the TV or radio would distort, playing backward for a split second, or dropping to a low growl. Sometimes, when Nora was talking, her voice would stutter, or words would repeat themselves in a strange, robotic fashion. It was like a bad recording. Nora, understandably, was getting very stressed. She felt like she was losing her mind. My instincts were screaming that something was wrong. This wasn't just faulty wiring. This was an interference, a disruption of our reality. One evening, I was sitting with Nora in the living room. She was describing her day, tired but smiling. Suddenly, her voice started to distort, going low and guttural. Then, the entire living room glitched. The lights flickered wildly, the TV turned on to full static, the smart speaker screamed a high-pitched whine. All at once. It was deafening, disorienting, and then I saw it. For a split second, the room flickered. Not just the lights, but the actual room. It was like a transparency, and through it I saw another room. A dark, strange space with glowing, unsettling shapes. And in the middle of it, a shadowy figure, tall and thin, reaching out. Its hand seemed to stretch towards Nora's belly. My breath caught in my throat. I squeezed my eyes shut, then opened them. The glitch was gone. The room was normal, silent, except for Nora, who was staring at me, her face pale. "Did you see that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "The other room, and that thing?" My heart pounded. It wasn't just me. She saw it too. At that exact moment, a sharp, violent tremor went through her belly, like a seizure, but internal. It wasn't a baby kick. It was a violent shudder that shook her whole body for a second. It was like something was tearing through, or trying to. Nora gave birth to a healthy baby boy, Finn. He was perfect, strong, and beautiful. After Finn was born, the glitches in the house stopped. The TV worked, the lights were steady, our phones were normal. For a while, we dared to hope it was all behind us. But sometimes, when Finn is playing with his toys, they will suddenly glitch. A toy car will freeze mid-roll, then zoom forward on its own. A light-up toy will flicker, then glow brighter than usual. And sometimes, when Finn laughs for a fleeting moment, his voice will distort, becoming low and growling, only for a split second. But I hear it. I see it. It's a chilling echo of what we experienced. The horror followed me home, making me question if we ever truly closed that connection, that rift in our reality. Finn is our son, but there's a part of me that constantly wonders if he brought something back from that other room, something that still glitches through sometimes, reminding us of what was lurking in the static. My name is Nathaniel Cross. I'm a chef, someone who deals with textures, flavors, and the tangible world. My wife, Lisa's third pregnancy, should have been routine, familiar, but instead it peeled back the curtain on our comfortable life, revealing something ancient and hungry hidden beneath. What happened was a slow invasion, a chilling sense of dread growing alongside our unborn child. Lisa was about 6 months pregnant with our third child. Our home was always filled with the comforting smells of food and the happy noise of our 2 older children, 8-year-old Mia and 5-year-old Ben. Life was busy, but good. I loved cooking for my family, creating delicious meals. Everything felt wholesome and grounded. Then the cold started. Not a normal draft or a cold spot. This was different. It was a localized, unnatural cold that seemed to emanate from a specific point in our kitchen. It started as a small patch, a sudden chill in the air when I walked past a certain spot near the pantry. I thought the fridge was acting up, but it wasn't. It was always in the same place. The cold patch grew. It spread from the kitchen into the dining room, then started creeping towards the living room. It was always coldest near Sarah, like it was following her. The kids started complaining about it. Mia said it felt like winter inside. Ben would refuse to go near the kitchen, saying it felt spooky. I started to worry about the heating system, but the rest of the house was fine. Then a strange, sweet smell started to accompany the cold. Not a pleasant sweet. It was cloying, almost sickeningly sweet, like decaying flowers and something else, something metallic. It would come and go, but always intensified near the cold spots. It made my stomach churn. Lisa started to get headaches from it. My instincts were screaming that something was wrong. This wasn't a faulty HVAC. This was a presence, and it was getting closer. One evening, I was preparing dinner in the kitchen. The cold was intense now, making my breath mist in front of me. The sickly sweet smell filled the air, thick and oppressive. I saw a tiny patch of frost begin to form on the kitchen counter near the sink. Not from cold food, just appearing on its own, crystallizing on the clean surface. My blood ran cold. Then our dog, a playful terrier named Buster, started to whine. He was staring intently at the cold patch on the counter, his fur bristling, a low growl rumbling in his throat. He backed away slowly, pulling at his leash, trying to get out of the kitchen. And then the frost started to spread. It grew rapidly, not just on the counter but up the wall, forming intricate, delicate patterns that looked like ancient script. And then a faint, almost imperceptible sound. A low, wet squishing, like something was moving slowly, purposefully within the ice. My heart pounded. The cold felt like it was pressing in on me, suffocating me. And then I heard it clearly, a faint whisper from within. The frost, a voice I could barely make out, but the message was clear, chilling me to the bone. Mine, mine, almost ready. The voice was old, crackling, hungry. At that exact moment, Lisa, who had been resting on the couch, cried out. I rushed to her. She was clutching her belly, her face pale, tears in her eyes. A sharp pain, she gasped, so cold, like ice from the inside. It wasn't a kick, it was a deep, internal chill that made her shiver uncontrollably. It felt like something was trying to reach for the baby, from the outside, through her. Lisa gave birth to a healthy baby girl, Lydia. She was a beautiful, calm baby. After Lydia was born, the intense cold spots and the sickeningly sweet smell slowly disappeared. The frost on the counter vanished. Our house returned to normal. For a while, I dared to hope it was all over. But sometimes, when Lydia is sleeping, I feel a faint, unnatural coldness in her room, and a brief, almost imperceptible whiff of that strange, sweet, metallic scent. And sometimes, when I hold Lydia, a tiny patch of my skin, right where she touches me, will suddenly feel icy cold for a second. It's a fleeting sensation, but it's enough. It's a chilling reminder. The horror followed me home, not just into our house, but into my child. A persistent chill that reminds me that some things, once they taste what they want, never truly let go. And some pregnancies don't just bring life, they bring something else, something ancient and hungry, right into your home. My name is Anna Kowalski. I'm a landscape artist. I usually find beauty and comfort in the world around me. But my second pregnancy transformed that beauty into something monstrous. What began as an artistic inspiration soon warped into a horrifying obsession, showing me that sometimes the most beautiful things can hide the darkest intentions. I was about 5 months pregnant with my second child. Our home was a small cottage surrounded by a lush garden, my personal sanctuary. My husband, Peter, was a kind, steady man. My days were spent painting, nurturing my garden, and enjoying the quiet anticipation of our new baby. Life felt vibrant, full of natural beauty. Then, the plants in our garden started to behave strangely. It began subtly. Certain flowers, usually vibrant, would droop and fade quickly, far faster than normal. Other plants would grow at an unnatural speed, almost overnight, becoming overgrown and tangled. I blamed the weather, or perhaps some bad soil. But it felt wrong. The plant behavior grew more focused. It wasn't random growth anymore. The plants seemed to be growing in specific patterns, forming strange, intertwining shapes that resembled symbols I'd never seen before. It was like they were being directed, guided by an unseen force. They started to grow towards the nursery window, their branches reaching, almost grasping. I'd prune them back, but they'd just grow faster, stronger. Then a strange, earthy smell started to fill our house. It was a rich, damp smell, like wet soil and decay, but also something else, something subtly metallic and sweet. It was persistent and clung to everything. Peter found it unpleasant, but I found myself drawn to it, almost compelled. It felt like the garden was trying to communicate with me, or perhaps lure me. My instincts were screaming that something was wrong. This wasn't just a green thumb gone wild. This was a dark, living energy. One morning, I went out into the garden. The air was thick with that earthy, sweet smell. The plants were denser than ever, forming a living tunnel towards the nursery window. As I walked, I saw something truly unsettling. Vines had wrapped around our porch swing, pulling it tighter and tighter, almost strangling it, and they were forming distinct, fleshy knots that pulsed faintly, like tiny, hidden hearts. Then I heard a sound, a low, soft murmur coming from the plants themselves. It was like a collective sigh or a slow, rhythmic chant. It wasn't the wind. It was coming from within the vegetation. My heart pounded. I looked at my belly. I felt a strange internal pull, a connection to the garden, a dark current flowing between me, the plants, and my unborn child. It was like the plants were reaching out, wanting something from within me. Then, the most terrifying thing happened. As I stood there, mesmerized by the pulsing knots, a vine detached itself from the porch swing. Slowly, deliberately, it snaked its way across the ground, directly, towards me. Its tip unfurled, revealing a small, delicate tendril that looked almost like a tiny, grasping hand. It reached for my belly, pausing inches away. And then I felt it, a cold, soft touch against my skin, from inside my womb. It felt like the vine had passed through me, touching my baby. I screamed, a primal sound of pure terror. I jumped back, stumbling. The vine recoiled, retracting into the dense undergrowth. The pulsing knots seemed to dim. The murmur faded. Peter rushed out, hearing my scream, finding me trembling and pale. "Anna, what's wrong? What happened?" he cried, holding me. I couldn't speak. I just pointed, shaken, at the now still silent garden. My son, Julian, was born healthy, a beautiful, perfect baby. After his birth, the plants in the garden slowly returned to normal. The strange growth stopped. The earthy smell faded. But I never touched the garden again. I couldn't. I had Peter hire someone to clear it all out, replacing it with a simple, barren lawn. Sometimes, when I hold Julian, I feel a faint, soft touch on my belly, a ghost of that vine's tendril. And sometimes, when he cries, I feel an odd, deep resonance within me, almost like an echo from the earth. The horror followed me home, making me question what kind of life I almost gave to the garden, and what connection it might still hold with my son. I wonder if the plants ever truly let go of their desire for him, or if they just lie dormant, waiting for a chance to reach out again. It is a constant reminder that some growth is not natural. My name is Derek Langford. I'm a chef, always working with my hands. My wife, Sarah's, pregnancy was meant to be a period of joy and anticipation. Instead, it became a terrifying journey into shared nightmares and a chilling loss of time. What we experienced wasn't just sleep deprivation. It was a deeper, unsettling reality where the boundaries of night and day blurred, and something else took hold. Sarah was about 6 months pregnant. Our home was a cozy apartment, usually filled with the comforting smells of my cooking. Our life was busy but happy. We spent our evenings planning for our baby, reading books, and just enjoying each other's company. Everything felt normal, if a little tiring. Then the sleep problems started. Not just regular pregnancy insomnia. These were different. Sarah would wake up in the middle of the night, not knowing where she was for a moment. Then she'd fall back asleep, only to wake up again, convinced she hadn't slept at all. I started having strange, vivid dreams too, unlike anything I'd experienced before. They were confusing, disjointed, full of shadowy figures and whispering voices. We both felt constantly exhausted, no matter how long we slept. We blamed it on stress and the upcoming baby. But the sleep problems grew more severe. We started experiencing shared nightmares. We would both wake up at the exact same time, gasping for air, having dreamed the same terrifying scenario. Always dark, always a sense of being trapped, and always a shadowy presence reaching out for Sarah's belly. It was like we were sharing a collective, horrible dream space. Then came the lost time. We'd wake up in the morning, feeling like we'd only slept for an hour or two, even if the clock showed 7 or 8 hours had passed. It was unsettling. We felt constantly disoriented. My instincts were screaming that something was wrong. This wasn't just bad sleep. This was a shared reality, an invasion. One night, we both woke up from the same nightmare. We were in a vast, empty void, and that shadowy figure was closing in on Sarah's belly, its touch causing her immense pain. We both jolted awake, drenched in sweat, our hearts pounding. "It's real," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "It feels so real, Derek." I held her close, trying to comfort her, but I was terrified too. Then the clock on our bedside table started to glitch. The numbers flickered, then spun wildly, showing random times before settling on 3 a.m. But when I looked at my phone, it showed 6:30 a.m., a 3.5-hour difference. My breath caught in my throat. We had lost time again, more than ever before, and then a faint, rhythmic scratching began on the wall beside our bed. It was soft, but insistent. It started matching the beat of Sarah's own heartbeat. It was like something was trying to synchronize with her, with the life inside her. I put my hand on her belly, and as I did, I felt a deep, internal tremor. Not a baby kick, but a shiver that went through her whole body, radiating from deep within her womb. It felt like something was being pulled from her or inserted. It was a deep, violating sensation. My heart pounded, a frantic drum in my chest. The scratching grew louder, more frantic. Sarah gave birth to a healthy baby girl, Emily. She was perfect in every way. After her birth, the shared nightmares stopped. The lost time ceased. We slept soundly again, but sometimes, when Emily is sleeping, I notice a strange, subtle, rhythmic movement in her chest, almost like the scratching sound we heard on the wall, a faint, persistent twitch. And sometimes, when she wakes up from a nap, her eyes, for a split second, will be unfocused, distant, like she's just returned from somewhere far away. The horror followed me home, making me question what happened during those lost hours. What did that shadowy figure do? What did it take? What did it leave behind? I still check the clocks obsessively, fearing another loss of time. And I watch Emily, always, wondering what she truly brings back from her sleep, and what memories she might hold of that other terrible reality. My name is Camila Estrada. I'm a florist, used to nurturing life and surrounding myself with beauty. My pregnancy with my first child was supposed to be a time of gentle growth and peaceful anticipation. Instead, it exposed me to a hidden darkness in our home, a malevolent presence that sought to claim what was mine. It made me realize that some things aren't just shadows, they are entities waiting to be invited in. I was about 8 months pregnant. Our home was a small, charming house filled with plants and the comforting scent of fresh flowers. My husband, Chris, was incredibly supportive. My days were spent arranging bouquets, tending to my indoor plants, and then coming home to the quiet joy of preparing for our baby. Everything felt vibrant, full of life and safe. Then the shadows started to move. Not just normal, shifting shadows from the sun. These were different. They were darker, denser, almost solid. They would gather in corners or seem to deepen around furniture, taking on vague, human-like shapes. I'd blink, and they'd flatten back to normal. I blamed my changing eyesight or just being tired, but they left a lingering feeling of unease. The shadows grew more defined. They started to move with purpose. I'd see a distinct dark shape glide from one room to another, always just out of direct sight. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of what looked like a face in the deepest part of the shadow, just for a split second. It was gaunt, distorted, and seemed to be watching me. I started turning on every light in the house, even during the day. Chris found it odd, but I couldn't explain the terror I felt. Then, a low, guttural growl started to emanate from the shadows. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was there, a low hum that vibrated through the floorboards. It sounded like something deep within the house. It wasn't the wind or a neighbor's dog. It was coming from inside our home, from the shadows themselves. My instincts were screaming that something was wrong. This wasn't just my imagination. This was a presence. One afternoon, I was in the nursery, arranging a tiny mobile above the crib. The room was bright, filled with sunlight. But then, a large shadow detached itself from the wall behind the crib. It swelled, growing larger, taller, until it became a towering, amorphous figure, darker than any shadow I'd ever seen. It had long, shadowy limbs that seemed to twist and stretch. It didn't have a distinct face, but I felt its eyes on me, on my belly. A deep, cold growl rumbled from its form, filling the small room, vibrating through my very bones. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move. The shadow figure slowly lifted one of its long, shadowy limbs. It reached for my belly, its form shimmering and wavering. As it drew closer, the cold in the room became extreme, piercing to the bone. And then I heard it. A faint, high-pitched wail, not from me, but from inside me. It was the sound of my unborn baby crying out in distress. Then the shadow's limb passed through my belly. Not a physical touch, but an invasion. I felt an icy, violating sensation deep within my womb, a sharp, searing pain that made me gasp. It felt like something was reaching for the baby, pulling at it, trying to drag it out. I screamed, a raw, primal scream of terror and pain. The shadow recoiled, its form shrinking, dissipating back into the corner of the room, leaving behind only normal shadows. Chris burst in, his face frantic. "Camilla, what happened? Are you okay?" he cried, seeing my terrified face and feeling the unnatural cold. My daughter, Lila, was born healthy, a beautiful and vibrant baby. After her birth, the moving shadows stopped. The growling ceased. For a while, I dared to hope it was all behind me. But sometimes, when Lila sleeps, I see a faint, darker patch of shadow in her crib, deeper than it should be, almost like a living thing. And sometimes, when I hold Lila, I feel a faint, icy patch on my belly, right where that shadow limb passed through. It's a constant, chilling reminder. The horror followed me home, not just into our house, but into my child. A persistent chill that reminds me that some entities don't just watch. They reach, they violate, and they leave a mark. And some shadows are not just optical illusions. They are hungry things, waiting for a chance to claim what is new. My name is Scarlett Cole. I worked night shifts as a security guard for 10 years. I was used to the quiet, the strange noises of empty buildings, and the solitude. But what I observed during my pregnancy wasn't just strange, it was something that defied explanation, turning my protective instincts into pure terror. I was about 7 months pregnant. My shifts were usually spent alone, patrolling an empty, high-rise office building downtown. The nights were long, filled with the hum of electronics and the occasional creak of the building settling. My partner, Jim, was on the day shift. I valued the peace and quiet, the time to think, even with the loneliness. It felt safe, mostly. Then I started hearing things, very faint, distant sounds that shouldn't have been there. It began with what sounded like children's laughter, very soft, echoing down empty corridors, or sometimes a little girl's voice calling out, "Mama?" It would vanish the moment I tried to pinpoint it. I blamed the pipes, the wind playing tricks, or my own tired mind. Pregnancy makes you imagine things, right? I tried to rationalize it all. The sounds became more distinct. It wasn't just laughter now. I'd hear the distinct jingle of a child's toy, like a plastic rattle, just around a corner, only to find nothing there. Sometimes I'd come back to my security desk to find a small, colorful plastic toy, one I'd never seen before, sitting on my keyboard. It would be a different toy each time, a plastic car, a rubber duck, a tiny block. I'd report it, but Jim would just shrug, saying maybe a cleaner left it behind. But I knew the cleaning staff only came during the day. This was deliberate. Then the cold spots started appearing, intense pockets of icy air in random places, often near where I'd heard the sounds. It was an unnatural cold, chilling me to the bone, even in a warm building. My breath would sometimes mist in front of me. I'd feel a prickling sensation on my skin, like someone was watching me. It was worse when I was in the elevator. The doors would sometimes hesitate, or even open on an empty floor, where the temperature would drop instantly. My instincts were screaming that something was wrong. This wasn't an old building settling. This was something trying to interact. One night, I was on my patrol route, walking down a deserted hallway on the 5th floor. The air was thick with that unnatural cold. I heard it clearly then. A little girl's voice, directly ahead, soft and clear. "Mama, where are you?" My heart pounded in my chest. I rounded the corner slowly, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. And there she was, a small, translucent figure of a girl, no older than 5, standing at the end of the hallway. She was wearing a faded, old-fashioned dress and holding a plastic rattle. Her eyes were large, dark hollows fixed on my belly. My breath caught in my throat. She wasn't solid. She was shimmering, almost see-through. And then she spoke. Again, her voice thin and ethereal, but chillingly clear. "You have my new brother, or sister." My blood ran cold. She knew. She knew I was pregnant. She knew what was inside me. The girl started to walk towards me, slowly, almost floating. As she got closer, the cold intensified, becoming unbearable, burning my skin. Her eyes, those dark hollows, seemed to bore into my stomach. She slowly lifted a tiny, translucent hand and pressed it against her own belly, right where my baby was. And then I felt it, a searing, icy pain, directly on my belly from the inside. It felt like a freezing, tiny hand pressed against my unborn child. A sharp, internal tremor shook my womb. Not a baby kick, but something violent and terrifying, like my baby was recoiling or being touched by something deadly cold. I screamed, a raw, guttural cry of pure terror and agony. The little girl's figure wavered, then dissipated into thin air. The intense cold vanished. I was left alone, gasping, clutching my belly, drenched in sweat. My son, Theodore, was born healthy, a beautiful and vibrant baby. After his birth, the strange sounds, the plastic toys, and the cold spots in the building stopped. I even saw Jim remove an old, dusty box of forgotten children's items from the building's basement, saying they'd been found during renovations years ago. They had probably been sitting there since before my time. But sometimes, when I hold Theodore, I feel a faint, icy pressure on his tiny belly, right where that spectral child touched me. And sometimes he'll stare into empty corners, a knowing, distant look in his eyes, as if seeing something I can't. He'll babble, and sometimes it sounds like he's trying to mimic a faint, high-pitched giggle. The horror followed me home, making me question what kind of ghost desired my baby and what mark it truly left. I wonder if Theodore truly is just my son, or if that lonely little girl found a way to stay connected. A chilling reminder that some spirits aren't looking to move on. They're looking for a new family. And some communications are not meant to be heard by individual minds, but by entire species.